Welcome to our deep dive into the history of nuclear weapons. Now you might be thinking, nuclear weapons? That's a bit heavy, isn't it? And to that I say, you're not wrong. But it's also incredibly important to understand how these world-altering devices came to be. Today we're exploring how each country acquired these powerful tools. From the first whispers of fission to the geopolitical chess match that followed, we'll unearth the motivations, the breakthroughs, and the frankly terrifying standoffs that shape the nuclear world we live in. Buckle up, because we're about to go on a wild ride through history, science, and enough paranoia to make a KGB agent blush. Our story, surprisingly enough, begins with a letter. Not just any letter, mind you, but one from Albert Einstein to President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939. In it, Einstein warned about the potential for Germany to develop an atomic bomb. Now imagine you're the president, and Einstein, a man whose very name is synonymous with genius, sends you a letter basically saying, hey, those Nazis, they might be building a weapon that could blow up the world. Not exactly a great start to your week, is it? Thus the Manhattan Project was born. A top-secret research program with the goal of building an atomic bomb before Germany could. Thousands of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, hidden away in secret labs across the country. Think a wartime government-funded science fair, but instead of baking soda volcanoes, they were literally splitting atoms. The culmination of their work? The Trinity test in 1945. In the middle of the New Mexico desert, the first atomic bomb detonated, forever changing the course of human history. And you thought your high school science fair project was impressive. The US had entered the nuclear age, kicking off a chain reaction of geopolitical consequences that we're still grappling with today. The US might have thought they could keep their new toy a secret, but the Soviets weren't born yesterday. Remember that paranoia I mentioned earlier? Well, imagine finding out your biggest rival has a weapon that can vaporize entire cities. Not exactly conducive to a good night's sleep, is it? Enter espionage, intrigue, and a healthy dose of scientific brilliance. The Soviets, through a network of spies and their own dedicated scientists, managed to develop their own atomic bomb just 4 years after the US. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb, codenamed First Lightning. The Cold War had officially gone nuclear and the world held its breath. This kicked off an arms race of unprecedented scale. The US and the Soviet Union frantically built more and more powerful bombs, each side desperate to maintain a nuclear edge. It was a terrifying game of one-upmanship with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. Now you might think, with the US and the Soviet Union already playing nuclear patty cake, who else would possibly want to join this terrifying party? Well, step forward, the United Kingdom. Britain, still reeling from the devastation of World War II, wanted to reassert itself as a major world power. And what better way to do that than by joining the exclusive club of nuclear-armed nations? Plus, let's be honest, they'd probably been feeling a bit left out. Imagine being in a band with two friends who suddenly learn to play the electric guitar, and all you've got is a recorder. You'd want an electric guitar too, wouldn't you? In 1952, Britain conducted its first successful nuclear test in Australia. Yes, you heard that right, Australia. Apparently the land down under wasn't just for shrimp on the Barbie and giant spiders anymore. With this test, the UK cemented its place as the third nuclear power, but it also deepened its reliance on the US for nuclear technology. Next up we have France. Now, France and the UK have a long and storied history. They're like those siblings who constantly bicker and compete, even over who gets the last croissant. So when the UK got its nuclear act together, you can bet France wasn't going to be left behind. But France, always striving for that je ne sais quoi, decided to go its own way. De Gaulle, the French president at the time, believed that France needed its own independent nuclear deterrent. He wasn't too keen on relying on the US for protection, especially after the whole Suez Crisis debacle. In 1960, France detonated its first atomic bomb in Algeria, much to the chagrin of, well, pretty much everyone. This move solidified France's independent nuclear policy and cemented its position as a major player on the world stage. As the Cold War raged on, another player emerged from the East, China. Now, China in the 1960s was a nation undergoing immense change. It was also facing increasing tensions with both the United States and the Soviet Union. Remember that whole "the enemy of my enemy is my friend" thing? Yeah, that didn't really apply here. It was more like, the enemy of my enemy might also be my enemy, so I better get myself a really big weapon. China decided to develop its own nuclear arsenal, viewing it as a means of ensuring its security and asserting its growing influence on the world stage. Plus, it probably didn't hurt that having the bomb also came with a hefty dose of international clout. In 1964, China shocked the world by testing its first atomic bomb, becoming the 5th country to do so. This test sent shockwaves through the international community and further intensified the Cold War rivalry. India, fresh off its independence from the British Empire, had a lot on its plate in the 1960s. It was trying to establish itself as a regional power, dealing with poverty and social inequality, and oh yeah, facing constant border disputes with its neighbor Pakistan. After China, who just happened to share a rather large and disputed border with India, went nuclear, India decided it needed a little something to even the playing field. In 1974, India carried out its first nuclear test, codenamed Smiling Buddha. Now you might think a name like that implies a peaceful purpose, but let's just say the message was received loud and clear by the rest of the world, particularly Pakistan. India's foray into the nuclear club added another layer of complexity to the already tense situation in South Asia. Remember those sibling rivalries we talked about? Well, the India-Pakistan relationship takes that to a whole new level. They've been locked in a tense standoff since partition in 1947, with numerous wars and skirmishes erupting over the years. So, when India went nuclear, Pakistan felt, shall we say, a tad vulnerable. It's like showing up to a water balloon fight armed with a squirt gun. Sure, you might get a few shots in, but you're ultimately outmatched. Pakistan embarked on its own nuclear program, determined to achieve parity with India. It was a classic case of, if they have it, we need it too. In 1998, Pakistan responded to India's tests with its own, becoming the 7th country to publicly test nuclear weapons. The world watched with bated breath as the situation in South Asia became even more precarious. North Korea has always been a bit of an enigma, a secretive state led by a family with a penchant for dramatic pronouncements and, well, nuclear weapons. After the fall of the Soviet Union, North Korea lost its main benefactor, leaving it isolated and economically vulnerable. Facing pressure from the West, particularly the United States, North Korea saw nuclear weapons as its trump card, a way to guarantee its survival. It's a bit like that kid in school who brought a stink bomb to show and tell because they thought it would make them popular. Spoiler alert, it didn't end well for them, and it's not ending well for North Korea either. In 2006, North Korea defied international warnings and conducted its first nuclear test, announcing itself as a nuclear power to the world. This test sparked widespread condemnation and triggered a series of sanctions that continue to this day. Israel has a long-standing policy of nuclear ambiguity, which is a fancy way of saying, we don't confirm or deny having nuclear weapons, but good luck sleeping at night. Surrounded by hostile neighbors and having fought numerous wars since its founding, Israel adopted a never-again mentality. They were determined to have the means to defend themselves, whatever the cost. Imagine being the only kid on the block without a bicycle. You wouldn't tell everyone you were getting one. You'd just show up one day, casually riding down the street like it was no big deal. That's Israel's nuclear policy in a nutshell. While Israel has never officially confirmed its nuclear capabilities, it is widely believed to possess a significant nuclear arsenal. This unspoken reality has had a profound impact on the power dynamics of the Middle East. Our final chapter takes us to South Africa, a country with a history as complex and turbulent as its nuclear program. During the apartheid era, South Africa developed nuclear weapons, driven by a fear of external threats and a desire to maintain its dominance in the region. However, with the dismantling of apartheid and the transition to a multiracial democracy, South Africa made the historic decision to voluntarily dismantle its entire nuclear arsenal. Imagine hosting a dinner party, realizing you accidentally made enough food to feed a small army, and then deciding to just give all the leftovers away. That's essentially what South Africa did, but with weapons that could level cities. In the 1990s, South Africa stunned the world by voluntarily dismantling its nuclear weapons program, becoming the only country to give up its nuclear arsenal after having developed it independently. Thanks for joining us on this journey through history. We've explored the motivations, the anxieties, and the downright terrifying decisions that led to the creation of nuclear weapons and shaped the geopolitical landscape we know today. From the deserts of New Mexico to the streets of Pyongyang, the quest for nuclear power has left an undeniable mark on the world. While the Cold War might be over, the threat of nuclear war still looms large. So the next time you see a headline about nuclear weapons, remember the stories we've uncovered. Remember the scientists, the politicians, the rivalries, and the sheer destructive power of these weapons. Because understanding the past is the first step in preventing a future where these weapons are ever used again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content.